It's time to enter the drone zone with me, James Drone, aka Pure Ambient Drone. So hit that subscribe button, tap that bell, and get ready to synth on.
Hey there, Synth Drones. We are back with another episode of Midnight Synthesizer Talk, number 27, with me, James Drone, the voice of synthesizers. This is the place where we close our eyes, open our ears, and expand our minds. Don't forget you can dig deeper over at jamesdrone.com. And if you like, support me at my Patreon page. A link is in the description below. Tonight I want to talk about Behringer gear failing. First of all, what brought this about is I'm surfing around. I'm always looking for information. I'm always reading, researching. And one of the most common complaints I hear, and in this first example, I'm just going to use the RD8, okay? I'm reading this discussion about how great the RD8 sounds, and it does sound fantastic. I've acquired one, and they are absolutely fantastic sounding. But then I hear in, this discussion, somebody says, I want the real thing from Roland themselves because it will last me longer. And I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute. These things are $3,000 to $4,000 average, and you want to go out and spend that kind of money rather than buying one, two, three, or four of the RD8s because, you could do that if you were really worried about them failing. You would have some insurance policy there, right? I mean, you could buy 3 RD8s for around $1,000 and some change, and that would probably last you a lifetime. Who knows? One RD8 might last you a lifetime. We don't know the longevity of these drum machines. No one has put out any statistics. And so the story goes over and over again with Behringer gear. I would rather pay full price for the nostalgic gear because I don't want the Behringer gear to fail. So I'm thinking about this and I'm like, I have Behringer mixers, I have their DIs, I have their synthesizers. I haven't experienced one failure. I even have their pedals. I'm not saying I have all of their stuff, but I have these items in these categories, and none of them has failed in the many years that I've had them. The mixer is in absolute pristine condition, no problems whatsoever. The DIs, I use them every single track I record with, and they're fantastic values for the money. The drum machine, I think it's great build quality. The Poly D, which I just got into the studio, wow, I'm loving that thing. So if I'm worried about one of these things failing, rather than go out and spend thousands of dollars on the originals that these things clone, why wouldn't I just go out and buy a couple of these and just keep them in their boxes? If they're that important, just store them away in a box somewhere. And, maybe in 10 years or so, one of them's going to fail. I don't know. I've had gear from Behringer going on, I think one of them is 6, 7 years now, my mixer. No problems at all. My DI systems, I've had those for like 4 or 5 years. So, I'm thinking, man, I probably got a long time before one of these fails. I don't want to jinx myself over here or nothing. But I'm not going to go out and buy all this expensive equipment that's like 3, 4, 5 times the product cost just because I'm worried about something's going to break. If you want to bring an argument to me about Behringer, you could say, well, they don't perform exactly as the originals do. I mean, that would be an argument. I'm not saying that that would be an excuse. I'm not saying that that's a fact, but it would be a more conceivable debate than, hey, I'm going to spend $4,000 on a 808 just because of the quality. So let's talk about quality of vintage gear. Yeah, I think that vintage gear was built with a lot of care and respect and the thought of longevity put into them because we still have them around. I have a Roland Juno 106 going on 40, I guess, and this thing is amazing. condition, but that's just because somebody took really good care of it and it's been restored. Okay. So a lot of times when we're thinking about synthesizers that have been around for 20, 30, 40 years, we sometimes forget that maybe somebody took really good care of them in the first place, and that if they needed any servicing, they may have had some servicing. Now, the Juno 106, I got that fully restored. I mean, all the sound cards have been replaced in it. The battery has been replaced in it. It's got new LEDs for the nice blue light effect. I mean, somebody put a lot of care into this synthesizer. And I suspect that if somebody hadn't taken care of it and restored all of this stuff, well, the sound chips would be failing and the lights would probably be going out. The battery would certainly be dead by now. I mean, it just wouldn't be in the condition it's in now if somebody hadn't taken care of it. So we have to remember that a lot of this nostalgia gear that we think's been around for 20, 30, 40 years, it's only around because one, somebody took really good care of it, and two, somebody might have restored some of it back to life. So we have to take that into consideration. The other thing we have to think about is this stuff is getting older and older and older. The original drum machines from Behringer are just getting super older, and they're going to fail sooner or later. And I don't know, maybe they'll never fail. But the point is that you're going to be spending more and more money for those that aren't failing. The prices are just going to keep going up. And I got to tell you something. The RD8, it is fantastic sounding. There's just no complaints at the price range. $399 delivered to your door in most areas of the world, or at least here in America. That's a no-brainer. I'm looking at I'm looking at VST plugins, and I'm not talking about instruments, okay? But yes, there are instruments in this category too. But I'm actually looking at some compressors and EQs, and these things are costing more money than Behringer hardware. What an outrage. Now, before everybody goes off on, oh, software's this and software's that, my background is in software. I developed software on a professional level back in the 90s, and I never even thought so much as ever charging some of the money that some of this software is going out for. I'm not saying that software isn't worth what some of these companies are asking for, but let's be honest here for a moment. Would you pay a couple of $100s for a software drum machine, or would you rather get the hardware version of it? Well, that question is kind of tricky, right? If you're in the box producing, you're going to want the software. But if you're like me and you like working with hardware and you want something tangible, you're going to go for the hardware. Now, I'm not trying to get into the debate here about software versus hardware. That's not where this is going. But what I'm doing is I'm making a point that for the prices that Behringer is asking for their synthesizers, and as of this recording, all of their synth gear, okay, their drum machines and their synthesizers are sub $1,000 in price. So why wouldn't a person want to get an authentic sounding and performing drum machine like the RD8 versus something like the real deal that's thousands of dollars more? I just can't see the argument of saying, hey, it's junk. Now, if somebody can prove to me that this drum machine, the RD8, isn't as good as an original 808, and because it's not as good, I shouldn't use it. They got to, you got to give me this argument that it's not as good, and it's it's so not good that you shouldn't be using it in your music. Well, that argument's never going to fly with me because I've been listening to this thing and I've been recording with this thing. And I'm going to tell you what, the RD808 is good enough to go in my tracks and any pro track that's out there. That's the end of that argument. There's just no argument with that. Behringer is making good gear. And if you're worried about it running out in the next couple of years, 5, 10 years, why not pick you up 2 or 3 or even 4? Why not just do that and stick them in a closet somewhere? And if one fails, throw it away or get it fixed or do whatever you want to do with it. But you still have several others and you're still below the original cost. And the sound, I don't see where the argument about that is because these things are good enough. There's no way in my book that they're ever going to be 100%. But even if the original manufacturers came back to this day and tried to get these things 100%, it's not going to happen. And you don't need them to. We don't need a 100% clone. We're just here to make music. We're here to make music. And you know what? If you really want to invest in your music, get better at your craft, get better at producing and mixing, get better at songwriting or whatever it is that you do with your music. Get better at that. Your instruments are very important. But you know what? You can have the very best instruments in the world and your music can still come out like crap. Okay. And it doesn't have to just be the composition of the music that I'm talking about either. You could have the very best instruments in the world recorded and be horrible at mixing, be horrible at using your EQs and your compressors and your arrangements. You got great instrumentation, but you got poor delivery. So, really, instead of complaining, people should be thankful that there's a choice of tools out there and they're able to use these tools. So, the next time you're online and you see somebody bashing the quality of Behringer, questioning it, ask yourself first, how much experience does this person really have in the craft of music making, synthesizer usage? You will find that if you do some digging, a lot of these critics out there really don't know what they're talking about, and they're really not producing music. So that's what I wanted to talk about with you guys tonight. Hit that subscribe button, tap that bell, join me over at jamesdrone.com, and above all, keep calm and synth on.